The social perception of online school success. For this project, I really wanted to look at what makes an online school successful and what society really views as a successful program to implement for an online school compared to a traditional school. So there's many different things to look at as we talk about students who would participate in this kind of program. We know students don't all fit the same mold. Their learning styles are different, their interests are different, they have different goals for post-secondary. So why is school only accessed for those students in a traditional setting? Why can't we look at school being designed to be different just like our students are? So in the day and age of technology and the advancements that we're having and the access to information readily at the fingertips of our students, why are we not looking at the ability of implementing online schools for our students, especially given the state of the world today in the pandemic that we are currently facing? So here's the issue at a glance. I really wanted to know what is needed to design a successful education program in general, not just an online school. And the main components that I really wanted to focus on were the views that society has of student work and expectations, the amount of time allocated to different parts of the day for students, how do we monitor progress for our students, how do we communicate with our students, and who is eligible to participate in an educational program. Notice that I did not include testing in these 5 focuses, as most people in society view testing as a non-important topic as far as when we're looking at the success of a student within an educational program. So throughout the readings that I did and the research on this project, I really wanted to know what the positives were that drive the need for online education. And it really is the access to curriculum at all times. Our students are facing different challenges and different schedules and different roles that they maybe didn't have in a traditional school model, or even, 5, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So the need to be able to access curriculum in a non-traditional time schedule is really what is a motivator for online education. Another thing is that the courses are completely built, which allows students to move through the curriculum at their own pace. And these courses are designed to meet the standards set by whatever the Department of Education says, whether that's at the state level or some national standards as well. The negative side of online education is, how do we look at accountability? A lot of online education programs are designed by corporations, not necessarily educators. So there oftentimes is an accountability piece missing in the design of these programs. There's also a need to discuss the integrity of a program. If students are working at home, how do we supervise that coursework and who is completing that coursework? And along with that, when you look at assessment and testing, as well as not just, daily assignments. So what really prompted the deeper dive into online schools was really the implementation of ECOT, which is the Educational Classroom of Tomorrow. The ECOT program in Ohio was launched in 2000. It was a community program, so it was subjected to the laws and regulations for public school districts. So it tried to really model itself online, but as a traditional model. So students were expected to have 25 hours weekly logged in to make it comparable. It was separated out just like a traditional model is, with K-3 program, 4-6 program, 7-8, 9-12. Each of those programs supervised by classroom teachers that were certified grade specific, and then it had administration for each of those levels by principals. In 2014, when we look just at the secondary program, ECOT had the lowest graduation rate in the country at 39%. So there were a lot of questions about the quality of the education, but also what were the downfalls of this program. So while this was really flawed in the design and implementation, it was a learning experience as we start looking at designing new and better virtual programs thereafter. So I really wanted to know what makes a online program successful, or what does society think makes an online program successful. So I launched a survey on my social media with the hopes to really get a broad perspective of society's view of online education. Unfortunately, my demographics were not varied in gender and race, or really personal experience. Everybody that I surveyed had experience only in the public sector of education. But I did get a wide range of age levels, as well as parents with multiple numbers of children, as well as those who don't have any kids. So their vested interest is a little different. I also really was happy to see a wide variety of different residencies, which is really important when you're looking at an online school, because online school needs accessibility, and so access to technology or internet connection or resources and tools, or even just the implementation of this type of program, or the abundance of this program, is different in different settings. So I really appreciated getting a wide variety of respondents from different types of living environments. So my first focus was, what were the keys to student success? And most of my respondents said that the work was really what gauges the success, because if students don't feel like they are connected to the work, or they don't buy into it, or feel that it's going to benefit them in some way, then they're not going to do the work, which means then there's no way to assess if students are learning and comprehending and gaining mastery within the content we're asking them to complete for graduation. So the least important thing here was testing. Nobody thought that testing was really a good way to gauge student success, as testing really creates a lot of anxiety. It's not a comprehensive measurement of the student as a whole. So the second most important thing was the communication. So although it's an online platform, and that most of the idea behind online is to make life easier and to streamline the process, they still think that communicating with the instructors is a key factor in the success of students in an educational program. The second focus was about coursework and time and allocation of the student work. Most of the respondents said 3 or 4 courses for an hour each day was necessary, because that's what is the expectation at a traditional school. You hit all 4 content areas, each for at least an hour, and you should be good to go. But a lot of them said that there's also a need to look at the individual and see what it, depends on the grade level, how many courses they should be in, but also the ability of that student and their other activities outside of school. My third focus was really on progress monitoring, which is the best way to help monitor a student as they progress through any of the courses. The majority of the respondents said that they needed some kind of manageable goal on a smaller segment. So whether that's a daily or a weekly activity list to help the student be successful. Just turning a student loose, giving them full open access to the coursework and letting them pace themselves was... My third focus was on progress monitoring. And how do you help monitor a student as they progress through a course? And so the idea of an online school having all the curriculum built and available to the student, do we want to give them open access to that in hopes that they just complete it as they need to? This is what happens a lot of times when programs are developed by businesses rather than educators. So the majority of the respondents really said that the students needed smaller manageable goals in the form of a daily activity list or a weekly activity list, and that students really should not have full open access and pace themselves through those courses. Along with that, as students do meet those goals, what positive consequences and what negative consequences when they don't meet those goals were asked of the respondents, and the majority of the people said that students should, if they're making good choices and sticking to those manageable goals or exceeding those manageable goals, they should be given some time to either take a break from it or to be able to accelerate their learning and maybe progress to some more advanced classes. If they're not progressing and they're not meeting those goals that have been set, smaller and more manageable, then maybe this isn't the best learning environment for these students. The fourth focus of this was really communication and how best should a online learner be able to communicate with their instructor. And while it was varied in their responses, the main thing that all the respondents said was that communication was key and that it doesn't really matter, but there should be multiple ways for students to be able to access those instructors for either one-on-one help or just checking in on their progress. And finally, who should be eligible to participate in this program? So a lot of programs, while they're put out there as a public option, just like ECOT was, and that the student could self-enroll in those programs, the majority of the respondents said that there should be some other data or other metric available, and those should be really reviewed by the school counselors to really determine that. And so one of those things that they looked at was Lexile levels, because if the material is being presented on a higher Lexile level than the student is prepared to meet, then the likeliness of success for that student in an online platform is much lower than it would be if they are prepared and reading at the proper level for what that material is online. So what does this mean for schools? I think at the end of all of this, what it really is that we need to really get out of the mindset of a traditional model when we're talking about online schools. You can't take what is normally done in an 8-hour day and expect to do an 8-hour day online, because there's so many other factors that play into a traditional day that is non-instructional time. And when a student sits down to the computer, that is just online instructional time. So I think what we're seeing, especially as we move through this pandemic right now and students are able to access curriculum online from their traditional school, if it's in a traditional model, then that is really just materials like an electronic filing cabinet where they have access to it online. That needs to be looked at differently than an online school program, instead of right now being compared to. So going forward, I think the biggest thing is, how do we shift the mindset of the public so that they understand that the instructional model for an online program is completely different than the instructional model of a traditional school. And while there's always going to be a need for that traditional model of school, because online school is not going to be shown as a successful model for all learners, we need to really think about, how do we get the buy-in for an online school if our mindset is always in a traditional model?